All right. Hello, everybody. We are doing another bonus stream today. How's everybody doing today? Retro U, hello. Good to see you here. All right. So I have it on good authority that the Twitch side may or may not be working correctly. So if you guys could just let me know on the Twitch side if you can hear me okay, I would greatly appreciate it. Yesterday it was YouTube that was giving me issues. Today it might be Twitch. So hopefully you guys can hear me okay. All right. So today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. We're actually going to be taking a look at performance stuff today. So that is what is on the roster. Before I jump into that, though, I do want to take a quick second and just thank the supporters of the channel, beginning with the partners who are the highest tier of subscription over on Patreon and YouTube memberships. They are Gaby Bashir and Girl Boys Inc. And I'd also like to thank all of the other supporters listed on the screen here. They are the other tiers of subscription over on Patreon, YouTube memberships, as well as Twitch subscriptions. So thank you very much for your support there. I greatly appreciate it. And of course, as always, I appreciate each and every one of you viewers here on Twitch and YouTube. We do simulcast, so we stream to both platforms rather. So obviously without you guys, this project would not exist. So thank you very much for being here. Okay, so today what we are going to do is we are going to look into performance related stuff. And the reason for that is because we kind of just turned a whole bunch of stuff on its head, right? And we added a whole bunch of features recently, and our performance has kind of taken a little bit of a hit from that because we just kind of put it into place and didn't really think about much else other than getting it working, okay? And so that is what we're going to take a look at today to see if we can get our frame time down a little bit. So, all right. With all of that said, let me just make sure that we are good to go. Can you guys hear me on the Twitch side and the YouTube side? You could just give me a thumbs up or something, and I would appreciate that. Okay. So, I mean, it says I'm live, so it should be good. So if we take a look at... in fact, actually, before I do that, there were a couple of small things that I had to put in yesterday after the stream that I should probably touch on. There were a couple things that I missed that I had to add later. So actually, let me review those real quick. So here's the repo, and we'll take a look at the latest couple commits. So this was our big commit that we did yesterday. And then we had a couple of small things that I had to address. These are really, really small fixes. So our projections and views on our shadow map terrain shader were actually the wrong scope. They were, for some reason, instance scope, and they should have been global, so I fixed that. And then our PBR map count, I forgot to update that from 10 to 7. So that was the only update there. So that's already up there and merged. And then in the shadow map pass, I did a small tweak to help with performance, or at least help with resources, right? And so what I did there is I removed the color textures, right? Because this was really just to verify that stuff was working as expected. And so I went ahead and removed that. So all of this logic here is just me removing that from there. So we removed the color buffer from being cleared. We reduced the attachment count to 1, and now we only have the depth pass, right? Or the depth attachment. So that's what all this is. And then that's the version. We also removed the color buffer from the render graph pass as a source, so that doesn't exist anymore, so we removed that. And then one little tweak that we had to make to the back end was we still had this leftover concept that we would always have two attachments for any pass, and that's not necessarily always the case. And so what we do is we take a look at the attachment first, and we say, okay, if the attachment type of attachment 0 is color, then we go ahead and perform this increment and include it anyways, right? Even if we're not necessarily clearing that attachment, we still have to have a clear value count for that, right? For that attachment. There's got to be one per attachment, right? And so this kind of addresses that, so that if we don't have a color attachment, it does not try to clear that attachment with something that shouldn't be there in the first place. So those are just a couple small tweaks I put in yesterday. Again, nothing huge. And that's all there is to that, right? Just a couple small things. And then if we go ahead, and I'm going to actually load up RenderDoc here. And I've already got a previous capture, but I'll go ahead and take another one. We can have a look at where we left off yesterday. So if I load this up, everything loads up okay. And this text down here is a little hard to read. We might have to do something about that too. But if I pan the camera up a little bit, we can see that our FPS or our frame time is crap, right? It's like 42 milliseconds, which is completely ridiculous. And so that's what we're going to try and address today, just to see if we can get that down a little bit, right? And I'm not guaranteeing that we're going to hit all of it, but we're at least going to hit some of it. So what I'll do is I'll hit this, I'll take a capture in RenderDoc so that we can kind of take a look at what is taking so long. File is corrupt. Oh, that's interesting. I've never had that happen before. RenderDoc literally failed to take the attachment or the capture. Let's try that again. All right, so we'll load. I just updated RenderDoc too, so I hope it's not that. All right, we've got a new capture. Is RenderDoc broken now? I hope not. I guess let me relaunch it. I hope it's not broken. That would really suck. New Year's stream, here we go. Yeah, it's not New Year's for me yet. But yeah, depending on where you are, it might be. So, yeah, welcome. YouTube is working great. Awesome. Okay, cool. Thank you for that. I'm going to take 2 captures. Because apparently... Wow, it's taking a long time. Why is that taking so long? Oh, don't tell me the newest RenderDoc is broken. I don't know if I can downgrade it or not. Well, that kind of puts a damper in my plans a little bit. I guess let me try cleaning and rebuilding the application. I don't think that has anything to do with it, but maybe it does. Seems that RenderDoc is broken, which is definitely not cool. It's getting corrupted output for some reason. Or it could be my Windows install, because this is now hung up. What is going on? Okay, I'm going to completely, I guess, quit my terminal and everything and relaunch, because apparently something has just completely foobarred across the board, and I don't know what it is. It worked from VS Code. All right. Sure. Okay, it worked that time. RenderDoc works for you on 1.3.0, but you only have a simple application. That's fair. Yeah, and the strange part is it wasn't doing this yesterday. So I'm not sure what the issue is. I hope it's not my motherboard acting out on me again, because that would really suck. I've been having issues with that, and I actually am going to have to rebuild my machine because my motherboard, I suspect it's my motherboard anyways, is causing problems. So I'm hoping this is not fallout from that. But I wasn't having this problem with RenderDoc until I updated it, so I'm not 100% sure what is going on here. Cake77 rated with a party of 79 viewers. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. How are you doing today? What were you working on today, Cakes? I really appreciate the raid. Thank you. Welcome, raiders. I will do a... I guess I'll do a quick introduction. Yeah, I don't think this captured correctly either. All right, so let me do a quick introduction, and then I'll go over what we're working on today. So, welcome, raiders. We were literally just getting started here with the stream for today. So we're doing performance pass on the game engine that I'm working on. So what we're working on is called the Kohi game engine. It's a game engine that is programmed in C, using Vulkan as our initial rendering backend, and it's programmed completely from scratch. So it started off as a YouTube tutorial series, and the format of that changed a couple of times over the course of the project, and now we stream development on it whenever possible. So it's 100% free and open source. So there is a repo on GitHub. In fact, I will drop in chat real quickly a link. And so it is Apache 2.0 license, which basically says if you want to use the code, the only thing you have to say is, hey, I used Kohi, and that's it. There will never be any royalties, license fees, any of that stuff behind this. It's 100% open source. And so we're building this game engine to basically act as a sort of educational exercise to show all of what goes into building a game engine from scratch. Including the troubleshooting and banging your head against the desk as we're currently doing. And with the goal of getting people to understand everything that goes into making one of these things, as well as hopefully motivating some people to want to jump in and do that. So with that, we don't paywall anything here. All the knowledge that is here is completely free on YouTube and of course Twitch, right? So that's kind of the goal, and we've been working on this publicly since early 2021, so it's been in progress for a while. Thank you guys so much for the follows, by the way. I really appreciate that. So let's see. Nothing really, just some YouTube video watching and a little bit of text formatting in your engine. Nice. How's that coming along, by the way? It's been a bit since I've been able to jump in. All right, let's see. Finally catch a stream. Awesome. Good to see you, Trash Can. Why the motherboard can be the issue. So actually, so I've been having problems with my machine booting, actually. And basically every once in a while, I'll just go to like cold start it, and it just won't post even. It won't do anything. And I just get zeros on my little debug LED thing. And I'll just try it a bunch of times, and it'll eventually go. And so at first I thought it was the PSU, just maybe not giving correct voltage, but I've replaced the PSU. So the next thing's got to be the motherboard. And I just get these strange things happening every once in a while on Windows, like what's happening with my RenderDoc right now. And I'm just wondering if maybe that's contributing to it or not. I actually have a new motherboard. I just have to rebuild it. In fact, after the stream today, that's probably what I'm going to do. Let's say I'm working on releasing the demo next year. For sure. That's awesome. That's really cool. I'm definitely going to keep posted or keep an eye on that. That's really, really, really cool. It never occurred to me to follow you on Twitch, even though you've dropped by on Javid's streams a few times. Yes, I have. It's been a while since I've been able to catch his streams because unfortunately they're usually at a time where I have to work, so I'm not able to usually catch his streams. But yeah, I do when I can, for sure. Cool. So I hope the little overview here made sense. And so basically, to give you an idea of where we're at in the development of the engine, we have a to-do file here that I've maintained, and it basically has a list of all the features that some of which we've done and some of which still need to be done. And so there's this file that's available here with all of that. So everything with X's in it is already done. Everything that is just empty is still to do. So recently we actually implemented PBR and shadow maps into the engine. And so actually I think I can go ahead and run this really quickly just to show you guys where we're at the moment. Oops, if I don't break it. Try that again. Okay, so right now we just have a couple of test models in here, right? And one thing you'll immediately notice is that our frame rate is total trash right now. And so that was the purpose of this stream, was to try and figure out why that is. So we basically have, this is the Sponza model. We're sort of looking at the outside of it here. And so if I go in here, we can see a little bit clearer what that looks like, right? And so what we've got is our PBR is in place. Our shadow maps, cascading shadow maps are in place. So this is kind of the normal rendering mode of it, or the standard regular rendering mode, right? We have a lighting only mode available here, so we could just see the lighting a little bit better. We could play a little bit around with the shadow mapping properties here. We've got a little bit of shadow acne going on here, so we can clean that up a little bit just by adjusting some properties. But for all intents and purposes, it works pretty decent. We have a normal rendering mode in here for debugging purposes, and then we have our shadow cascade sort of colorized view here. And so this is just to kind of give an indication of where the shadow maps are in terms of limits. And so that is what we just recently put in terms of our actual features, right? That's our sort of newest feature that we just put in. And my premise has always been sort of, we put those features in, get them working, and then we go back and optimize, right? And so that's kind of where we're at now, is we're in the optimization phase. What's the pulsing? Okay, so I should probably explain that. So what's this in the HUD? So we also are implementing a UI system from scratch. And so this was just an example of a UI control that's just sort of scaling back and forth on a sine wave, essentially, just to show that it's dynamically updatable, right? And the UI system is far from complete, but it is one thing that we kind of started with a few basic controls, and this is just a button, is all that is. We also have like a test log up here, right? So that we can, type some text in, and enter commands. So if we wanted to exit, we could do it that way, right? And so that was just an example of a UI control that's sort of continuously changing its state, just to make sure that all of that works correctly. So our UI system is completely from scratch as well, and we only have a few controls. In fact, that was one of the things that was in this list, right? So we have what we call the standard UI, and this is basically what we've implemented in that so far. So we obviously have a lot of things to implement. So the other thing, let me just, let's see, I bought myself a new Ryzen 7 5700X, and it feels nice to build things faster. Heck yeah. Yeah, this one's a 3950X, which was one of the better ones available when I built it. So, yeah. But so another thing I should mention about this engine is the fact that we're building it in a sort of modular kind of style, where a lot of the main systems in it are actually plugins. So you have the core engine, which is here. Whoops, here. And this provides a lot of your basic things like your core utilities, your math, your memory utilities, platform layer stuff, things of that nature. We also have a renderer front end, which is essentially the aspect of the renderer that the rest of the engine interacts with. And then we have a renderer backend, which is actually implemented as a plugin, and that's down here as our Vulkan renderer. And so the renderer itself is actually a plugin, and you can decide from the perspective of the application what renderer you want to use. Right now, Vulkan's the only option, but we are eventually going to have Metal and Direct3D as well. So we do currently supports the 3 major desktop platforms, so Mac OS, Windows, and Linux. And so those platform layers are core to the engine, just because of how that kind of needs to work, right? So that's all under this platform layer here. And then some other examples of plugins are the audio plugin. And so our audio system is also a plugin. Right now, this one implements OpenGL. But if you wanted to have a plugin that uses Fmod instead, we could simply write a plugin for that and just add that, right? So our standard UI, our UI system, is also a plugin because there are applications that may need all of these controls. Think of an editor, for example, which is what I have in mind for this. So an editor would need something like this, but your runtime game probably doesn't, right? Your runtime game could probably use a much lighter UI system. And so the UI system itself is a plugin. The core engine knows nothing about that, right? And so that's kind of the premise that we're following with this is make as many things as possible a plugin. Okay, so let me catch up on the YouTube side because we are streaming simultaneously across both platforms. Happy New Year. Thank you for that. Happy New Year to you too. It's not quite New Year where I am yet, but it will be later today. So do you have any gain from making this engine? Not really in terms of personal gain. The only real gain is that I get people telling me it's useful and it helps them. And that's sort of my payment for it, right? I don't make any money off of this whatsoever. The only money that I make from it is from like Twitch subs or people supporting me on Patreon or things like that. But all of those things are purely optional. The membership doesn't really get you anything other than a shout out on the videos because I don't believe in paywalling content, right? And so it's purely optional, right? Why not make games with it? That is the plan. So we are nearing the point where I can actually make the first game with it. And so we're going to be starting that soon in this next year. And the idea is that as we develop this engine, we're going to stop along the way every once in a while and make a game with it, just to sort of test out the engine to see how it works and figure out what needs to change, what works, what doesn't work, that kind of thing. The only way that you can really test to see if it's functional, right, is to sort of eat your own dog food, as it were, and make games using your own product, right? So that's what we're going to be doing. You had that issue on your Z590 board. Did you try replacing the CMOS? No, I haven't. I've flashed it a number of times, but I haven't actually tried replacing it. No. I was able to find a replacement motherboard for not too expensive, so I'm going to try that and see if it fixes it. Happy New Year, loving the work. Inspired me to work on my own, much smaller and much simpler in Zig for learning. Awesome. So see, that's exactly what I'm hoping to achieve, right? Is when somebody tells me that this has motivated them to start on their project. That's what I'm hoping to achieve. That's my payment, right? How many years are you in this industry and advice? Wait. How many years are you in this industry and advice that gets it very late and is very helpful? So I don't currently work in the game industry as per se as my day job, right? I did for about 5 years, but I left it because I got tired of the hours. So this is purely like my side work, right? I do have a full-time job in addition to this, so I'm developing this on my spare time. But yeah, any industry advice on that? That's kind of broad. So if you could kind of bring that in a little bit and let me know specifically what you're looking for, I could probably help. But that's kind of a broad question, right? If you guys are using HDD drives, I'd recommend to solder the pins so they won't be freeze. Also reduce the fan speed so the RAMs have no vibration. I don't have any spinning hard disks in this. Looking amazing. Thank you. Appreciate that. Let's see. Any stories that are interesting from your type of work? Stories that are, well, okay, I have to think about stories that I can actually tell where I won't be breaking any NDAs, right? Let me think about that one. Let me think about that one and I'll come back to it. I'm currently watching some of your vids to also create a Vulkan engine, but I'm not sure if it is so good to follow if your engine is getting more complicated. I'm currently a junior soft dev. So what you could do is you could follow along and just kind of watch and skip through and see if it's the direction you want to go. Take a look at the source code since it's freely available, but use it as a guide, but not as a sole source of truth, right? There's 1,000 ways to do this, right? This is just one way of doing it. And it's not going to be everybody's cup of tea, right? Some people are going to want to do it a different design, and that's perfectly okay. But use this as an example of a design that you could follow, right? Learn things from it, and if you want to do things different, that's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. Different approaches to software development is what makes us stronger, right? It's always good to have different perspectives. So I would say follow along, but you know, take it and think about it, and think about different ways that you would do it, right? Game engines are very complicated things, so there's not really a way around that. Let's see. Vulkan is said to have more performance than OpenGL, but you should try not to code everything from scratch using Vulkan, I think, because it's very complicated and verbose. So, I mean, yeah, Vulkan is very complicated and verbose. There's not really a way around that, right? Yeah, there's no way around that. There's only through it, right? As far as the more performance than OpenGL, that's not necessarily always true. It's only really true if you actually write it the correct way and do it the correct way, right? Like right now, we're actually suffering from some performance issues, so we need to actually address that. Vulkan allows you to shoot yourself in the foot very, very easily. You should use some Vulkan framework to start with. That's not bad advice. But as long as you don't stick to that, I would say eventually you should probably learn what it's doing all the way down under the hood as well, right? Because abstraction, while great, also prevents you from fully understanding what's happening. Hi, watching you a long time, but I never write to chat. Anyway, it's very nice watching you while also working on something else. Kind of boost productivity. Awesome. Welcome. Glad to have you here. So the point is to find a good Vulkan implementation. Yep. For me, it's more about the focus and stages of what to implement and not how. I can want to figure out the how. Yeah. Okay. That's good, actually. That's a good way of looking at it. It's to find a game engine structure to implement, since game engine architecture is quite hard. Yeah, and I always recommend... let's see. I always recommend this book, which is Game Engine Architecture by Jason Gregory, right? This is the 3rd edition. As far as I know, it's still the most current edition. This book is a fantastic read. It's a thick boy, you know? That's 2 C's thick, at least. But I highly recommend it because it's got a lot of knowledge in here. Not only in terms of architecture, but also what all the different systems do, and it even kind of dives into how CPUs work and how memory works. So definitely a recommended read. Okay. Let's see. Looks cool, thank you. Vulkan doesn't ensure your performance unless you know what you're doing. Exactly. Makes it very easy to shoot yourself in the foot. What's your workflow look like when you're just experimenting with a piece of code? Do you just maintain both headers and C files, or do you just implement in place and then split them into HC files? Depends on what I'm doing. And it depends on where I'm doing it, I guess. Usually what I'll do is I'll do a lot of hacking in the C file. Oh, we have ads. Hold on 1 second. All right, so one thing to explain about my stream here is that whenever we get an ad break, which is every 30 minutes on Twitch, we're served with 90 seconds of ads. I like to stop the stream or pause it and wait for those ads to go through. So not everybody gets those ads, I understand that. But the sort of 90 seconds is the worst common denominator there. And so I just like to pause the stream so that nobody misses content. And then we come back, right? So I just like to do that. All right. So we've got about 45 seconds left, and that also gives me a chance to get some water, which is good. So we got about 30 seconds left, and then we can continue. I'm just going to put this book back real quick. Okay, just a few more seconds and then we'll be done with ads. Okay. Right, where were we? Okay, so what is my workflow when I'm implementing new features or experimenting with code? So a lot of times I just do a lot of hacking in the C file, and then I'll go ahead and split it up. So my premise is generally, when I'm adding a new feature, get it working, even if it's ugly, get it working. And then sort of check that in, right? Commit it, whatever. And then from that point, move forward in cleaning it up, splitting it out, and performance, right? Because you can sit there and you can try and architect your code and make it super clean and super fast, right? But if it doesn't work, it's useless, right? So get to that point of getting the feature to work, and then definitely come back for cleaning it up and optimizing it. The thing is that you can't skip those last two steps either, because they're just as important as the first step, right? It's just without it working, what are you doing, right? So that's generally what I do is I implement generally in the C file if I can do that, unless I have some idea of how I want to architect it in the first place. So it's a little bit it's a little bit dependent on what it is that I'm doing, but a lot of times I'll hack stuff in the C file and then clean it up later. Web GPU is something to look up for. Good middleware between driver, Vulkan is essentially a driver API, and your code. Yes, Web GPU was only recently supported on public builds, so it is something that I want to get back into because I've done some web GL work. In fact, that's what my day job is. It's actually web GL stuff. So web GPU is something that I want to definitely look into, and maybe even write a small engine for that, right? All right. Hello. I'm working on a couple of Go.engine bugs. You'll be good company. Awesome. Welcome. Looking at how clean your copy of engine architecture makes me feel bad about my worn copy. It's actually not that. I mean, it's kind of a little bit beat up. I guess it just doesn't show on camera, because I've read through that book probably 6 or 7 times at least. Not getting French ads or any ads. Yeah, so ads vary by platform, and they also vary by locale. So if there's no ads to fill that slot, then they won't run. Okay. Am I familiar with it looks like the chat bot, I guess, filtered out what you were saying, Olaweg. Are you familiar with something? Seems like it'd be right up my alley. You might have to just type it without the actual URL. Do I have any of the Game Engine Gems books? I think I have digital copies of those, yes. In fact, I'm pretty sure I bought it as part of a Humble bundle, I think, at one point. Oh, Handmade Network. Yeah, of course. Yeah, in fact, I referenced that on the front page of this, right? This was initially inspired by Handmade Hero, right? And then I also included links down here to that because I think it's a really important movement that's happening, right? So yeah, that's definitely there. Okay, so must say I really like this year's style of development with Kohi on streams and whatnot. I appreciate that. Wasn't yesterday video 159? Yesterday was actually video 160, but I forgot to change the title before I went live, so it probably notified as 159. The video list is not up to date. It stops at 146. Oh, you know what? I've been forgetting to add that to the playlist. Thank you. I'll have to go and update the playlist. Because I was just like, oh, they're over on, they're automatically going to be on YouTube now because it's, because we're streaming directly to it, but, stops at 146. Okay. I will get that fixed. Probably offline. Do you often back up the code carefully and compile small steps instead of writing a bunch of code at a time? Again, depends on the feature. I could do either one of those things or sometimes a combination of both. It depends on how big the feature is. This feature, this last thing that we wound up doing, it wound up being a lot of code, actually. And I'm going to open a pull request here in a second, so you guys are going to see how big this feature actually was. How many hours have you been coding this game engine? I have no idea in terms of hours. It's been this next January, or maybe it was February, I can't remember. I think might be February, is going to be 3 years I've been working on it. So, but also, you know, it's a part-time thing for me, so I do it in my off time. This man is an iconic computer nerd. Yeah, I'm definitely a huge nerd, for sure. In rendergraph.c, are those member call functions, and C, are they function pointers or some compiler extension? So a lot of those things are function pointers, if that's what you're wondering, where it says like where it says like pass, arrow, whatever. Yeah, those are function pointers. Hello from Brazil. I'm interested to know if you've done all of it in C. Yes, it's 100% in C. The only time I use C++ is in iterators. That's it. Just recently found out about your channel and wanted to say a huge thank you for all the knowledge you're sharing with us. Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that. Was the render in Kohi deferred or forward or some hybrid mix? So right now is all forward rendering. We are going to be doing deferred rendering and we're probably going to do forward plus at some point as well. And we're going to allow all of those, right? So it depends on the application as to what you need, right? Because not all applications need deferred or forward plus, right? So you'll actually be able to choose. And that is actually all decided by the way that we set up our render graph and configure it. So let me look up configure render graph. So right now, our render graph basically has a skybox pass, a shadow map pass, and then a scene pass. And so this configuration right here is basically what determines that. So if I have this scene pass is technically a forward renderer. And so I might have like a deferred pass or a forward plus pass eventually. I might wind up renaming this from scene pass, right? But right now it is what draws the scene. And then we have an editor pass, which is for like our gizmo type stuff, and then a UI pass. And so it all is dependent on how you actually configure this. So right now we only have forward, but we'll be adding to that. You didn't know that C has no iterator? Yeah, it doesn't have like the iterator objects. So like what I meant by that was kind of a joke, but let me see. That would be in, let me actually just search for, I think I have to escape these. Right, what I meant was like this iterator here is the only time I use C++. When I have an when I have an iterator number right here, and then I increment that, that's the only time I use C++, right? Otherwise it's C. All right, cool. So, where I was with this was, for some reason, and I may wind up having to reboot because of this, so we might actually have to shift gears in what we're doing, was for some reason, when I launch our test application, I'm able to load up a scene just fine from RenderDoc, right? But when I go to capture it, it just doesn't capture it correctly. And I have no idea why that is. And it won't let me open it. Unrecognized section type FF. Like, I don't even know what that means. So I have no idea what is going on there. And I think if I try and capture a second one, it's probably going to fail as well. Maybe. So I don't know if it's me or if it's the application or what. But like, look how long that's taking. It's NVIDIA. I use NVIDIA instead of AMD. I need to get an AMD GPU because I've got some issues to try and troubleshoot on there. Use I instead and you'll never have to use C++. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, and I only really use C++ as a joke, right? For that, just so that I can say I use C++. Thank you all so much for the follows, by the way. I really appreciate all of the follows. Thank you. All right. So I think I'm finally caught up on the chat. Yeah, Insight. I may have to actually switch to that. Yeah, see, it didn't even save that capture. So that's very strange. Like, I don't know. Check for updates. Yeah. So I may have to downgrade it because, like, I didn't have this problem until this morning, literally. So I don't know if it's RenderDoc, if it's my application, or what. I guess what I could try is maybe doing it before I load up a scene. Of course, that's not really going to help me a whole lot, but... Yeah, so maybe it's something going on with that because I'm able to open it here. So that's a little bit bizarre. I don't know what's causing that. But when I run it, let's get rid of that. If I just run it normally, let's see, bring this guy down. So if I debug it, it seems to run just fine. You know, I can move the camera around and stuff, and I don't have any issues. I don't think I got any errors in here either. No, I don't have any errors. I don't have any validation stuff. Nothing. So I'm not sure. But, okay. So I guess mainly what the issue is here is just this frame rate. Like, I've got to get that up, right? 34 milliseconds is just ridiculous. And I know part of what the problem is. There's some errors. I think that's just me not destroying stuff though. Yep. This is all stuff not being destroyed before I shut down. I should probably resolve that too, I suppose. But this didn't happen until we actually started shutting down, right? So, Sponza details, diff, view. Oh, okay. I know part of what the problem is there. So in the Vulkan image, we recently added, if I peak definition on this guy, we recently added the ability to have multiple views for layered images, right? So we have just this one image view that's used in most circumstances, and then if we have multiple layered images, like we have an image array, then we have this layer views array that is just an array of views that's used for each one of those layers. So we always have this one, which represents all of the layers, even if there's only one. And then if we have more than one layer, we have an image view per layer. So I'm wondering if I just didn't destroy that properly. No, it doesn't look like it. It looks, if we have a view, then we destroy that. If we have layer views, we go through and destroy all of those. So I'm not sure why this is bleating. View index 0. Oh, I wonder if I'm creating this regardless. That could be a problem, actually. So that might be part of the problem, actually. So whenever we do the creation of an image, if we are flagged to create a view, we create this view first. And then we do this, even if we don't need to do that. So this really should be if layer counts is greater than 1. Then we do this. So I think we're creating extraneous views that we don't need to create. That's probably part of the problem. Maybe RenderDoc is choking on that. So I know that there's still some other stuff that we're not destroying, like some frame buffers that we are creating that we're not destroying. So that might be part of it. So load this up. And then that actually knocked down our frame time a little bit. That's actually kind of funny. All right, so if we destroy this, now I think it's just frame buffers that we're not destroying. Okay, so those are all in the shadow map pass. So we have our names here: shadow map, frame buffer. Yeah, okay, so it looks like there's one of those per cascade is what I'm thinking. So if we go to shadow map pass, and we have initialize. This is where we're creating our textures themselves. So it's not that. This is all where we're loading up the shaders. And then load resources, we're doing right here. So here's our attachments. So we're probably just not undoing this. So I'm just going to grab this. And when we destroy this, let's see. We're destroying the texture maps, the render pass, but we're not destroying the attachments. So let's put this inside of here. Destroy the attachments, 1 per frame, render texture, destroy. That's destroying the actual texture, but not the actual attachment. So let's put this here. We can get rid of most of this stuff. We need to actually destroy the render target. So attachment count is this frame count here. That's basically the same thing. So we can get rid of that and just use attachment count. Move this down. Change this to a k-free, which is basically just our free that we've implemented for our custom allocator. So we'll free the targets array like that. This should be, oops. This should be render target destroy. And I think all that takes is the render target itself, as well as to free the internal memory. Okay, so we can get rid of all of that. And then set that to true, because we want to kill the internal memory as well. And then, should we do the textures first? I don't know if we should do the textures first or the render targets first. But I think I'm gonna do this first. So that should theoretically solve our issue. Let's see. RenderDoc, sometimes AMD drivers often have bugs like these. Yeah, I'm wondering if it could be a driver issue, I suppose. No, the validation layers aren't complaining about anything. Like, the only thing that we're getting is on shutdown. Yeah, the weird thing is, like, the actual RenderDoc capture itself is corrupted, which is strange. I worked on single header C libraries last summer, but I think I like C++ more, especially when you're dealing with MSVC's flavor of C and you're missing out on stuff of type of and whatnot. Yeah, there's so I'm using Culling, which has some of that stuff as well, its own flavor of that, and it translates it to MSVC's extension. So there is actually one place I'm using that for my dynamic arrays. Will you be implementing shader reflection after improving the frame rate? Yes, that is on the list of things to do for sure. Because right now our shaders actually have to have a configuration file. That's basically just a bunch of like metadata. So for example, our PBR material shader has a file that looks like this that tells us, what our attribute layout looks like, what our uniforms are, what our samplers are, and then we have scope associated with that too. So our global is basically saying anything global gets updated once a frame. Anything instance level gets updated once per material instance, you can think of it as. So if you have 10 objects in a scene and 5 of them are wood and 5 of them are metal, then that instance update is going to happen twice per frame, right? Once for wood, once for metal. And then the local is per individual object itself, right? Per draw call, you can think of it as. And so we have to have this metadata to go with it. And this is basically what we feed into the rendering front end, which gets passed to the back end, which tells Vulkan how to build the pipeline. RenderDoc loves to crash with OpenGL captures. Yeah, what's really interesting is, like, I haven't had any issues with RenderDoc for years, up until, like, right now, of course, right as I go to stream. How does one know what a game engine is supposed to consist of? So that varies by the game engine itself. It depends on what you're making the game engine for, what kind of game you're targeting. Yeah, it depends on your requirements, exactly. So if you're making just a small, simple 2D game, like, you don't need physics, probably, right? Unless you're making a physics-based game. It really depends on the end application's requirements. If you're making something that's super generic, like Unreal or Unity or something like that, then you're going to include as many features as you possibly can to try and cover as much as you possibly can. If you're making something that is customized to tailored to the needs of a specific game or application, you can make it a lot smaller and simpler, right? And so that's one of the reasons that we're doing things as plugins, so that we can add and remove those things as necessary, and we don't have to carry the weight of the entire engine every time. But yeah, it heavily hinges on the requirements. Also, doing lots of research into existing engines, and reading books like the Game Engine Architecture will help you kind of split those things apart in your head and wrap your brain around what you need and what you don't. So, all right. What is the end goal of your engine? Will you be trying to make a game using it in the future, or is it strictly an engine project? So we are going to be making several games with this. So the idea is we're going to start with a super simple game as the first game that we ship with this. And then we're going to make increasing complex games after that. But the idea for this is I have several games that I want to make, and this is going to be the tech stack that I make those games on and ship them. So we are building an engine, but we're also doing this as a means to an end to actually make games and ship them. So do you use, another question, do you use any extra libs originally designed for C++, but you hard-coded to adapt to your implementation? At the moment, no. The only exceptions to the written from scratch rule that we have in here, there are a couple. So there's a couple libs that I do use that are header only, because it just didn't make sense to write these things from scratch. So STB image and STB TrueType are two of those libraries. So this is to load image files of various formats, and this is to load font files. This just made absolutely no sense for me to implement from scratch. These are, I mean, I could spend months on just these alone, right? So I didn't write those from scratch. And then also there's a couple under our audio plugin for additional formats, where we have this mini MP3 to load MP3 files, and then we have this STB Vorbis to load OGG Vorbis files, right? But those are the only libraries that we're using, and they're all C libraries, single header. All right. Also curious to know your opinion about destroying resources at the end of the program, like the ones that Vulkan is complaining about right now. So generally speaking, I think that you should destroy resources, because there's also going to be situations where you have to load and unload things like scenes, which we do have the capability to do. I'm essentially unloading the scene when we shut the engine down. Theoretically, you could just stop the application, but Vulkan is close enough to the metal, so to speak, where not doing that might cause a problem if the driver doesn't do exactly what you expect it to. I mean, technically that could happen in OpenGL too, but as a matter of practice, I usually like cleaning up all the resources, right? And that's why whenever I see these validation errors, I'm like, yeah, I need to go address that, right? I don't just let them rip. Let's see. I've always thought of it as an unnecessary step because the OS will be freeing that for you anyways. Correct me if I'm wrong. So there's some things that I don't bother, like all of our systems that we stand up. There's a lot of that I don't bother getting rid of, like our custom allocator, which is where we get all of our memory from. It's basically a huge arena. I don't bother freeing that, right? Like I know the OS is going to take care of that for me. So plugins are basically DLLs. Yep, essentially. Yep. And they're some of them are hot reloadable. Do you know that there's a STB image version 2 which is now focused on speed? I did not know that. So one thing I should mention about this being in the actual engine is these vendor files. This is temporary. So eventually what we're going to do is we're going to have our own binary format of textures, and we're going to strip these out and put them in our external tooling, probably in an editor, right? Or maybe a command line application that the editor calls. And what we're going to do is we'll have our own binary format for texture files, and the engine, the core engine runtime, will read that instead. And we'll use these to read in files, source files, and convert those to our format. And then our engine only ever has to worry about that. And these will be stripped out of the application, so it won't impact runtime performance, right? And that'll speed up our loading a lot, because if we actually profile this is STB image is one of the things that hits us really hard right now. So, but it is good to know that there's a version 2. So I might take a look at that at some point and upgrade that if it makes sense to, just to make our tools a little bit faster. But this is not a permanent runtime solution. This is temporary. You wrote a 24-32 bits bitmap loader that works well, but I stick with STBI because it supports PNG and JPEGs, right? Which are more common, yeah. And that's what everybody wants to use, right? That's what everybody wants to import. So I do not feel like implementing that from scratch, right? We have ads, so I'm going to pause the stream real quick. So for those of you who are new, we pause the stream for 90 seconds every 30 minutes because that's when Twitch receives ads. So I just don't want anybody to miss content because they're getting served ads, right? So thank you guys very much for the follows, by the way. I appreciate that, and welcome. We're getting pretty close on our follower count to 1,000, which is freaking awesome considering I started streaming this year, which is basically, it's way more than I expected. So I really appreciate you guys with the follows. Thank you very much for that. We actually also hit our other goal on YouTube of 12,000 subscribers this year, which was my goal, and we smashed that as well. So I appreciate that, guys. Thank you very much. Okay, so we got about 30 seconds left on ads, and then we can continue. And I will continue checking on chat. Let's see. Yeah, we're almost all the way through those messages, so. Just a few more seconds on ads and we'll be good to go. All right, cool. Ads are dead. Let's see. So you also use free instead of STBI free. It's the same. Yeah, I think it just points to free under the hood if I remember correctly. I need to correct myself. It's image resize 2. Oh, okay. So is that a different library then? Or is that the STB image resize library that you're talking about? Because I know that's a thing as well. All right. So about the MSVC flavor of C, it implements dynamic arrays into my single header libraries past year. It's ugly macro hack right now, but it keeps the user's responsibility to provide the contained type minimal. Basically just inserts a local structure with allocation, count, and data pointer into the stack, and that's it. Other macros will modify the local struct. Yeah, so that's basically the way that my dynamic array works. So we have this D array, and that's essentially what this does under the hood. So our D array basically implements a whole bunch of macros, right, where we include the type and then we just do a size of on the type. And then under the hood, we basically just have this capacity, length, and stride for the elements, and then a block of memory for the elements. So that's essentially what we do. Ads suck. Three ads in a row. Yeah, unfortunately, I can't control what kind of ads get served, so I just make sure to stop the stream so that you guys don't miss anything, right? Jeff must make his money at Iwatasaka. I have no idea. Do I like Vulkan? I'm thinking of getting into graphics programming, but I've heard so many bad things about Vulkan, I don't know what to use. So Vulkan is the way of the future, right? OpenGL is, while deprecated, still very much active, right? In terms of use, right? It's not being updated anymore, but a lot of people take exception when I say it's deprecated, right? But you need to remember that deprecated is not the same as obsolete. It's not obsolete yet. All GPU manufacturers still support it, right? but it's not the way of the future. The explicit APIs are, and that's Vulkan, Metal, and Direct3D 12, right? And so really it comes down to what platforms do you want to support? Do you want to support multi-platform, or do you only care about Windows, right? OpenGL is unmaintained, exactly. Yeah, it's not going to receive any more updates, but it's still very much usable. It's not going anywhere anytime soon because there's too much software out there that relies on it, right? It should start to live its own life on top of Vulkan, like Zinc. I would not be surprised at some point if driver manufacturers start actually just making OpenGL a translation layer down to Vulkan. I would not be surprised if they did that at all, if they aren't already. I haven't heard about that happening yet, but I think that's probably eventually the way it's going to go. So that way you have that backwards compatibility, but it's still using, the new framework, right? But I wouldn't rely on that also, because whenever they do go ahead and do that, they're going to get parts of it wrong, and there's going to be bugs, even bugs on top of already existing well-known OpenGL bugs. I wonder what Intel does that for their, if Intel does that for their Arc GPUs. That's a good question. Yeah, because that's brand new software, right? So many engines are moving entirely to Vulkan. Godot is done, Star Engine, etc. Yep. So Vulkan seems to be pretty popular just because it's cross-platform, but you have to bear in mind that Mac OS doesn't officially support it and never will. There's Molten VK, which is what we're using, which is a translation layer from Vulkan to Metal. And so that works pretty well, but there's some issues with it, right? Like our code here, we've got a couple things that I have to fix so that it runs on Mac OS before I can actually merge this stuff into main. OpenGL translation layer to Vulkan is an excellent idea. Yeah, and I think that's the way they're going to do it. I honestly do. That would make the most sense, right? Because then all the software that relies on it isn't automatically obsolete and unusable, right? So, but yeah, I think that's the way of the future, right? And so I would say if you only care about Windows and you think you're only going to do Windows development and never anything else, Direct3D/DirectX is a fine option. But if you do care about working on multi-platform, Vulkan is probably a better choice, right? And then of course there's always Metal, which is Mac OS only. If you want to get into that, you could certainly go that route. We're going to be writing a Metal backend for this engine as well. So I would discard Apple out of spite. Sure, they have cool toys, but their exclusivity is just disgusting no matter, with no end, yeah. They're basically dictating how web GPU specs should work, thus, yeah, so the WGSL thing, I'm not a fan of whatsoever. The fact that they're using that instead of SPIR-V is completely ridiculous to me. But, that's Apple, right? They're the ones who developed WebKit, and everybody's using WebKit on the web nowadays, pretty much, except for Firefox, right? So that's what you get. Everybody went that way, and yeah. I agree, SPIR-V would have been a no-brainer even for Metal. Yep, but it's not the way they went, unfortunately. But if you're new to everything, I would recommend starting with OpenGL for a couple years until you get your bearing, rendering, unrendering concepts. Switch to Vulkan in a couple years. Yeah, it depends on what your experience level is at, right? For learning about graphical concepts, OpenGL is going to be faster to experiment with. If you are already experienced with OpenGL, and you know your way around C pretty well, or at least C++, then Vulkan is fine. But Vulkan allows you to shoot yourself in the foot way easier, so you have to just remember that, right? But eventually, that's going to be the way you're going to want to go, is something like Vulkan or Direct3D. No, it's all in STB, but is the resize header for images. Yeah, all GPU vendors are looking at you, Apple. Yeah, exactly. Intel is doing it for Proton with DirectX below 10 to DirectX 12. Yeah, that makes sense. And even on, you have DXVK too, which is a pretty cool thing where DirectX 12 is, or DirectX 11, or I think it's any version of DirectX is essentially translated to Vulkan for like Mac and Linux, right? Which then, of course, on Mac, it has to go from DirectX to Vulkan to Metal. But how about using a library like BGFX or so-called GFX? I've not used either of those, so I can't speak to them, to be honest. The danger with using libraries, right, and this is the same danger with using game engines, is you are using somebody else's version of how it should work. Which is one of the reasons I'm doing this, right, is to show another different way of doing it, right? And so the idea here is this is a way to do it, but it's also not the only way, right? So you have Unreal's way of doing it, you have Unity's way of doing it, you have Godot's way of doing it, right? Everybody has these different concepts about how these things should work. And so if you limit yourself to just using an API and you learn that one API or that wrapper library, essentially, you're limiting yourself, right? Because it's not going to necessarily translate to when you have to work on a proprietary engine that uses Vulkan. If you used some wrapper library, you're not going to understand how it works underneath the hood, right? So there's pros and cons. It depends on what you're looking to accomplish, and it depends on where you're looking to go. Let's see. If all the big engines got together and they just said, we're not spending thousands of dev hours to dedicate to Metal, then Apple's hand would be forced. There's probably a lot of money involved. Yeah, the thing is, though, like, the amount of dev hours that it would cost companies to support it and stuff, like, a lot of companies just go, oh, I'm not going to support it regardless, and they'll just, use DXVK or something to run their engines on Mac, right? Or they'll use Wine or something, some equivalent, right? A lot of companies aren't really concerned with that, right? Because it's not that high a cost to actually port to Metal. It's not that bad. And generally, there are people out there that can do it, right? If you've written against one of these APIs, you can write against any of them. It's just understanding, they're all essentially built out of the same components. It's just understanding what they all are called, right? Apple's business concept is that you handle it separately everywhere. Yeah, essentially. If you're an engine dev enthusiast, then this is amazing, but realistically, for people who just want to make games, would never actually get around to making a game. Yeah, so that's the thing. We are making an engine, but we're, and it is taking quite a while, right? It's not for the faint of heart, right? But we are going to be making games with this engine. We're not just going to be making game engine and putting it out there to the ether and never shipping a game on it, right? We are actually going to be making a game with this. Why can't we just get C on all OSs, but graphics programming isn't like that? Yeah, because you have GPU manufacturers, right? And they all want to do their own thing. They don't follow the same spec, right? Essentially. Have I looked into meshlet shading? Not for this engine yet, no. It's probably in the distant future, rather. But, yeah, that's definitely after we've shipped our first game, for sure. I agree with making an engine, game engine by yourself because we can validate our intelligence, but we also don't have to learn someone else's classes, which is also could take the same amount of time, and we don't pay. Yeah, so I mean that's the other thing, right? Like if you're using your own tech that you wrote yourself, you know it in and out. You're not beholden to any company to provide bug fixes or provide guidance. And especially with engines that you don't have the source code to, you're locked out of doing those fixes yourself. So you avoid that too. And you also avoid debacles like what happened with Unity with all of their licensing and stuff that happened a couple months ago, right? If you write your own tech, you never have to worry about that stuff. So there's pros and cons to everything, right? The pros being you have complete control over everything. The cons being that obviously it takes a lot more time to develop, right? I'd spend the rest of my life bug hunting, but you're obviously more skilled than me. I don't know about that. It's everybody has different sets of skills and everything, right? So I may excel in one place, but you excel in a different place, right? So it's not a comparison, right? Comparison is sort of the thief of joy and productivity, right? Don't spend time comparing, just spend time self-improving and learning. All right, we should probably do some actual programming. So I added this in. Did I build it? I think I did, but let me actually see if that resolves our validation errors. So I'm gonna run this again. This always launches on my monitor up there, so I have to kind of drag it down every single time. I should probably put in some fix for that. All right, exit the engine. There we go. So that's fixed. Okay, so I wonder if some of that stuff I adjusted will fix RenderDoc captures. Try it again. All right, so we'll load this up. Take a capture. Nope, because I'm not getting a thing here. So I don't know why that's not working. I'll have to investigate that off screen. Yeah, so our frame time is still kind of rubbish, right? It's still... RenderDoc is saying 38 milliseconds. I'm measuring closer to 40 for our frame time, right? So that's definitely not good. Unrecognized section type D3. Like, what does this even mean, RenderDoc? What does this even mean? I don't know. And the problem is it doesn't, like, give me the opportunity to even save the file and examine it. So, what is the CPU and the GPU time on that frame? Well, that's the thing. I can't even... Like, I'm not even... Oh, are you saying the frame time that... let me see. Are you saying this right here? So, I have a couple of different timers here. So, and mine is a little bit different from what RenderDoc says, just by a little bit. But this is basically how many microseconds the update loop takes. This is for the prepare frame bit. So that's where we're building up all of the structures to throw off to the renderer. This is the actual renderer, which is hovering around 30. It says 30 microseconds, but that doesn't feel right to me. That should be 30 milliseconds, I think. So I'll have to investigate that. But then the present takes this long, and the total takes this long. And this right here is basically the total amount of time that the frame is taking to draw. Actually, this might be correct because we're not drawing anything. So if I do this, so we can actually read it. Yeah, it's reporting right around the same thing, so... This just seems wrong. There's something wrong with my analytics in here that are timing this. Because this is all saying it's microseconds, and it's definitely not. There's milliseconds in here for sure. And before, when I was profiling this, I know what the problem is. I was just trying to display it. So basically, we've got 4 shadow passes that run, and we're not doing occlusion culling on any of those. And that's what's taking all the time, because it's basically... It's drawing everything in the scene for all 4 of those shadow passes, and then it has to draw the scene itself, right? So inside it, I don't think I have Insight installed because this is a relatively new Windows installation, which unfortunately, yeah, I don't have it installed. And I'm afraid to download it for fear that it's just going to consume all my bandwidth, right? And like I said, I have to rebuild this anyways, which might require me to do a new Windows install. So I probably am going to do that next time. But what I'm going to try and put in place now is some occlusion culling and see if that helps us out any. The CPU side looks okay. It's the GPU that's taking a long time. Yeah, exactly. I think for my GPU timer, I think what's happening is it's only recording the amount of time that it takes to gather everything up and throw it at the GPU, but it's not actually taking the amount of time that it takes to render that. So I think that's where my metrics are wrong there. Because my overall timer is correct in terms of how much time there is between one iteration of the game loop and the next. but my render time is not correct. So I think I need to set like an additional semaphore there, so that I can actually measure that. Do you debug your code also in Vim, or do I use Visual Studio for that? Yeah, so right now I'm using VS Code for that. And the reason for that is I've tried a number of NeoVim plugins, but they don't seem speedy or reliable. And so this is generally much more reliable for that. And the other reason is because I have this configured. It works on all 3 platforms, so it's very easy for me to debug in this on Windows, Mac, or Linux. Right, so at some point I'm hoping to get the Mac over here hooked up in such a way where I can actually stream from it and maybe run a stream from it, so you guys can actually see me troubleshooting stuff on there, but not quite there yet. All right, so we've resolved that issue. So what I want to do is go over to where we're gathering all of our data per frame. I'm actually going to quit this split over here, and we want prepare frame. So this is the step that essentially gathers all of our render data for the passes that we have hooked up in our render graph, and determines what passes need to run and what data needs to be passed to each one of those passes, and so forth. And so basically, if we have a scene loaded, then we go ahead and we figure out our cascade splits and all that good stuff for our shadow pass. And then if we have a directional light, we go ahead and perform what we need to for the shadow passes. So the shadow passes only run if we have a directional light. So I guess some of this stuff could probably be moved inside of here. But again, that's not going to be a performance concern. So where I'm thinking a lot of the things are, and again, this is like some code that I need to obviously clean up a little bit. We've got some hacks and stuff in here, right? Where I am thinking the issue is going to be is where we are clipping some of these. Let's see. This is where we're essentially querying the scene for our meshes, right? To figure out from the perspective of a frustum what we should be rendering and what we shouldn't be rendering. I don't remember if I turned it off here or if I turned it off shadow clipping enabled, right? Oh, okay. So I basically turned this off with a Boolean, right? So we weren't passing a shadow frustum because we ran into an interesting issue, and I think I know what the problem is, but I've not debugged it. So this will be a good thing to take a look at. So if we run this now with clipping enabled and we load up the scene, we can see that our frame time is automatically already better, right? It's not perfect, but it's better. And the reason that I turned it off is, if you'll notice, our shadow map there kind of goes away and comes back, right? And as I move around, there's like weird clipping in and out of objects, right? And I think what's happening is this is because we're essentially using the individual frustums of the shadow passes to perform the frustum culling. So we have 4 different frustums that we use within our system for each shadow pass, right? And the first one is really, really close to the scene, and then the second one is a little further out, right? And I think only the furthest out ones are not aligning correctly, and we're losing objects that should be included, right? And so when we get really close to this, we can see like the roof line up here disappears and comes back. And I think that's getting clipped because not all of our frustum data is correct, right? And even this is not actually correct, so you can see it there. So what I think is happening is we need to only use the outermost frustum. instead of the current shadow frustum. So this is basically the first one. This is the per cascade shadow frustum. And really what we should do is when we generate the first one of these, we should save it off in a further up scope, and then only use that here, right? And I'm thinking that's going to solve that issue. So if I do frustum, and then I'll call this first frustum, and I'll come down here, and let's see, in the shadow frustum, I'll say if C, which is the cascade, is equal to 0, that first frustum equals shadow frustum. And then we can use first frustum here. I'm not sure if it has to be the first or the last, to be completely honest. It might be the last that we need to use. I might have that backwards in my head, actually. It's a pain in the neck to set up Vim for C++ development. Yeah, so I actually have a article that I wrote, and I'll paste it on both sides with my setup, right? My new Vim setup. And that's probably about 95% accurate / up to date. I need to update some things on it, but it's mostly what I have here, right? And it is kind of a pain, but once you get it set up, you never really have to touch it. Because I don't update Vim, I don't update the plugins, because every time you do, stuff breaks, and that sucks. All right, let's see. The problem I have with VS Code is IntelliSense. It's very slow, especially when parsing large Vulkan headers. Yeah. I feel like Vim is a little bit faster with that, for sure. But obviously, if you're on a large code base, there's not really a lot that's going to speed that up. Gebby, Bashir, hello. Welcome. Good to see you. A real dedication. It's a new year in a moment. Everyone's partying, probably. Well, some of us just doing the stuff we love always. Yeah, exactly. So it's not going to be the new year for me for another 10 hours. A little over 10 hours. But yeah. Thanks, you're very inspirational as usual. I appreciate that, and I appreciate the support, Gabby. Thank you. Thanks, we'll check it out. Yep, no problem. By scaling down the models, you also have more room for the frustum. By scaling down the models, you also have more room for the frustum. I'm not sure what you mean by that. Can you clarify that? All right, so let's try running this. And like I said, I may have actually done that backwards. I may need to grab the last frustum, not the first. Seems to have fixed the problem. Yeah. So that's fixed the problem. I don't think we have any more of the weird popping issues. Well, maybe we do. We'll see. Yeah, we do, I guess. So that's not perfect yet. Is it grabbing the wrong one, I wonder? I wonder which one it is actually looking at, because it looks like we're missing, like these objects here aren't. Yeah, so maybe I am pulling the wrong one. If I back way out. Yeah, I don't see those being drawn. So let me try the last one. Thank you for the follow, by the way. So instead of first frustum, let's do if C equals max cascade count minus 1. I guess we'll call this Culling frustum, right? This is not necessarily the first, not necessarily the last. Let's try that. See if that works. I wonder how much Nanite does use the meshlet rendering pipeline for the virtualized geometry rendering. I'd like to give it a go, or something similar to Nanite, but I guess the mesh clustering and the LODing is the trickiest part. Yeah, exactly. I haven't done enough research on that yet to even think about trying to implement that. But there are a number of simple things that we need to do here that can give us real performance gains, right? So let me run this again. So one of the quick things that we can do. Nope, that's obviously the wrong cascade as well. I think I had it right before. So I wonder if maybe my frustum is wrong. Oh, we have ads, so I'm going to break real quick. So for those of you who are new to the stream, I like to break whenever ads are served on Twitch. So that's once every 30 minutes for 90 seconds. I break so that nobody misses any content, right? Because nothing sucks more on a programming stream when ads are up on the screen and you can't hear what's actually being said and can't see what's being discussed, right? So out of respect, I just like to kind of pause the stream and wait for those to come through, and then we'll continue. So we've got about 45 seconds left on that. We got about 25 seconds left, and then we'll jump back in. Need to hydrate as well. Ad breaks are good for that. Almost done. Okay. Ads are dead, and we're back. So, a couple things that we need to do that are also going to help us in terms of performance is right now this terrain is not chunked. So we're basically drawing this huge, massive terrain every single frame. And this terrain is mixing 4 PBR materials together, right? So we really don't need to be doing all that. What we should do is sort of chunk up the terrain and only draw chunks of the terrain that are within the view frustum. So that's one thing. The other thing is we don't have any LOD in place. We do have MIP mapping, but we don't have any mesh LOD in place. So I'd like to do a little bit of experimenting with that in terms of we'll do it kind of the traditional way where we have models that provide that data. And then we can also try sort of detessellating the mesh. I don't know what the term is for that, but basically cutting down the number of faces programmatically. And we'll try that and see how that works out as well. Okay, so let's see. We should pre-scale the model when loaded. So we are actually doing that. Like all of these models have transforms, right? So like this Sponza object is actually huge. It's gigantic. We're rendering it at a scale of 0.01, I think, because it's gigantic, right? Same with this car. It's at like 0.35 scale, right? So we are actually performing scaling already. Because the clipping is simply the max from -1 to 1 on the z-axis. Yes, relative to the light direction, right? So if we take a look at a couple things here, I'll show you what we are working with. So if we take a look at, it might be a little bit hard to see. Let me see if I can find a good angle for it. There's a line in here that is basically representative of the light direction. Where is it? I think it's this gray one right here, right? But if we come out this way, we'll also see that we have this kind of large box right there. and that represents the view frustum. And so we're not actually, I'm sorry, not the view frustum, the shadow map light frustum, right? Or at least the general direction of it, right? So that's the direction our light is coming down, which you can see is not 100% just straight down on the y-axis, right? And so that is just kind of a visual representation of that. And then we also have a visual representation of the view frustum if it weren't hooked to our actual camera, right? So that's bound to just 0, 0, 0 at the moment, but I just want to make sure that that was correct, right? So we have visual representation of some of that stuff, but it's not clipping 100% correctly, right? Although in here this looks to be correct, actually. So did we get it correct? Maybe we did. Because we're getting all of this stuff rendered now. Maybe that did fix it. And then if we come out here... Oh, no. The car is not shaded. So there is going to be something that we still have to figure out. Why is the car not shaded? Maybe the frustum is not moving as it should be. So that might be something. So the shadow view is generated. Let's see. The shadow view is generated based off of the view camera's current position. And we basically generate a box or an orthographic projection matrix that encompasses the whole camera's orthographic matrix, right? So I think that is working correctly. I may have to do a little bit more digging on that to find out why that's not necessarily following us around, because all of our shadows generate correctly if we have that frustum culling turned off, if we just draw everything. So I'm thinking the culling itself is just maybe calculating incorrectly. And I'm considering redoing that anyways, to be sphere-based instead of axis-aligned bounding box based, because it'd be cheaper and faster. So I may wind up actually switching that anyways. Nanite uses a tessellation shader. I believe it does. Again, I haven't really looked into it, though. I saw the demos from it when they originally announced it, but I never looked really into how it works. It's something I want to research for sure. Looking into Vulkan development for a few months now. No code written yet, but I'm glad I found your channel. Awesome. Welcome. Good to have you here. I also want to have a simple LOD system, so that's something we're going to be putting in very shortly as well. Catching your share of ads. Awesome. That's always a great thing, right? The Bezos has got to get in. Let's see. Do you have any sort of global illumination planned? I assume that's what you mean by GI for the engine yet. It's planned, yeah, but not implemented yet. Would you say streaming helps you to keep yourself accountable and focused? Yes, it does, for sure. It helps me a lot, actually, to have that sort of accountability out there, to kind of keep it moving, right? And also, I've kind of gotten past that point where I don't know if it's just me, but like a lot of projects, you kind of get this shiny object syndrome and you want to kind of move on to a different thing. But that kind of starts to fade away after you get past a certain point in a project, right? Once you make enough of an investment into a project in terms of work, that for me at least starts to dissipate after a while. And I don't get this sort of, well, I want to drop this and go and do this other thing, right? Like I said, I'm almost 3 years into this project, so I think I'm hopefully past that now. But yeah, hope that makes sense as to what you were asking. All right. So this is terrain meshes. So that's not an issue. So this isn't working yet, so I'm going to actually turn this back off so that at least we get accurate shadows. And then when I revisit it, I think we're going to change the way that this frustum culling works. I think I'm going to go with essentially distance-based queries, which are going to be a lot faster than doing queries based off of axis-aligned bounding boxes, right? Because I won't have to check mins and maxes and orient the bounding boxes and stuff like that. So, in fact, so if we take a look at simple scene mesh render data query, so this is the guy that essentially takes in the frame data or the frustum and tries to include it in a list or not include it based on that. We actually have bounding sphere calculation in here, and we're using this axis aligned bounding box calculation. So what I'm actually thinking is maybe a second form of query that takes in the directional light. Well, would it be directional light or just maybe a direction and a point? And then we just figure out how far away from that line we are in space, and include it or not, right? So maybe that's the way to go. Maybe that's what I'll do. In fact, I'm going to put a to-do in here to that effect. Whoops. So let's say distance from line detection. Per object instead of, well, I guess not instead of, in addition to, right? Because we might still want this as well. E.g. light direction and center position, then distance check from that line, right? So maybe that's the way that we call this, right? Maybe let me try to actually write this out. So we'll call this simple scene mesh render data query from line. That's really long. I'm not sure I like that, but so we'll have a const simple scene pointer to a scene. And then instead of a frustum, we'll take a vector3 direction, another vector3 position. Maybe I could call that center. And then we'll call the next thing, we'll do F32 radius. We'll need frame data, P frame data, U32 out count. That should be a pointer. And then struct geometry render data pointer out geometries. Right, and obviously if we don't have a scene, we return false. Return true. Okay, so the other thing that this does is also separates transparent meshes from non-transparent meshes. And the reason that we do that is because we want to render the transparent meshes last. And then we also base that on distance from camera so that they render in the same order. This is kind of a forward renderer specific thing. We might also think about including an option to not do that, because when we do a deferred renderer, we're not going to need to do that. And order independent transparency is something we're going to be addressing at some point. So maybe for now I'll keep it, and then when we actually implement those things, I'll just remove it, right? Let's see. Bit late, but yeah, that's what I meant by GI. Okay, yeah. There's some interesting global illumination tech released last year. Godot got its new shiny HDD AGI. Trying to think of what all that stands for. Path of Exile 2 team got their Irradiance Cascade system, which works in screen space. Could apparently be done in world space too. Interesting. Oh, Radiance Cascade, not Irradiance. Okay, that makes sense. That makes more sense. Deferred rendering also handles transparent in a separate pass. Right, exactly, which is why you wouldn't necessarily need it to be sorted that way. It would actually have to be split. Although for forward plus, not necessarily. Well, yeah, forward plus would still have to have it separated out. Let's see. I'm thinking about having convex meshes for representing hidden objects and only draw objects that have ID on the screen until the mouse move. Okay. HDDAGI stands for hierarchical digital differential analysis global illumination. You're right, that is a mouthful. You know what? I'm just gonna copy pasta that into a notepad, because I'm never gonna remember that otherwise. I am streaming today. Hello, welcome. How are you doing? Welcome to the stream. All right, so let me see. How do we want to... I'm trying to think about how we want to actually go ahead and handle this, right? Because this is essentially going to be a... It's essentially going to be a distance to line check. And then if it's within this radius, or I guess max distance we could call it. No, I think radius makes more sense. All right. So if it's within the radius, it'll pass the test. If it's not within the radius, it will fail the test. I'm thinking... I'm trying to remember what the dang algorithm was for this off the top of my head. And I don't know that I'm going to remember to. Oh, it's been a while since I've had to write that from scratch. It's one of those things, again, that you figure out and then you never think about it again. I think it is literally just... You know what? I'm going to Google it. I don't remember it. I don't remember it. Let me pull this up real quick, because I honestly have not dedicated it to memory. And there's nothing wrong with... let's see. I guess I want 3D point to line distance. So it's direction. Oh, it's just the cross product of the point minus line start. And then you take the magnitude of that, and then take the magnitude and divide it by the direction's magnitude. That doesn't seem... All right, so if we have... We don't technically have a line start and line end, right? All we really have is direction. So I guess we could count the center as like our line start and go from there. So I guess I'll just kind of do this in line for right now, and then I'll move it to a math function. Actually, no, I'm not going to do that. Let me just put it in the math library where it belongs. So I'll go down to, I guess, the bottom. Thank you for the follows, by the way. Appreciate that. So let's do F32, and we'll say vec3 distance to line. And the line is going to have a, let's say, a vector3, yeah, we'll call it vector3 line start, actually. Vector3 line direction. And then we should probably put the point first. So let's say vector3 point. And so from what I'm looking at, we should take we should do vector3 sub and subtract the point minus the line start, and then grab the cross of that. The cross product of that and direction. And that should give us what we consider the magnitude. And then we take the magnitude and divide that by the vector3 length / magnitude of line direction. And we return that. Oh wait, what am I doing? This is not a, this is a vector3. Right? And so I need to do a vector3 divide. Line direction. Do we have a divide scalar? Wait a minute. No, that's not right. Why am I getting... That doesn't seem right. That doesn't seem right at all. I don't remember the dang... Alright. If I go to... Isn't it the dot product I want, not the cross? Oh, I skipped a step. That's what it is. I need the vec3 length of this. That's what it is. I was like, wait a minute. That doesn't make any sense. Okay, so then we take... We don't need this. I was like, none of this seems to make any sense. Okay, that is what we're supposed to do. So we have to take the... We subtract the point, or the line start from the point. Take the cross product of that in a line direction. Get the length of that vector. Take that and divide it by the length of a line direction vector. That seems correct to me. Not 100% sure. I guess we'll find out, right? So let me take this. Thank you for the follow, by the way. Appreciate that. And go to the header file and add this down here and export it. That way I can use it in my other function. So now we have vec3 distance to line. So the point in our case is going to be center. Wait, no, it's not. I lied. That's going to be the point of the individual thing that we're checking. The line start is going to be center. The line direction is going to just be direction. Right? And then the point is going to be the point, we'll say the center point of the object that we're looking at. It's not going to be quite that simple, actually. So we need the distance from the center point, right? But then we also have the this radius to take into account, and then the radius of the individual object. And then we have to make sure that those don't intersect. So let's take all of this stuff, because this is the next step. Whoops, up here. And we got ads coming up shortly here, so I'll have to take a break in just a moment. All right, so I don't care about the winding inversion at the moment. I do care about this, though. So let me get that up here. Let's see. Looks like I've missed a couple of chats here. HDDA is the stuff a Raycaster uses and originates from Wolfenstein 3D. Yeah, okay. I gotcha. Hello, hello world. Hello, Ralph. Ralph? Not sure if I pronounced that right, hopefully. Welcome. Alright, so, our extents on this, do we have... We do have a center point. Sweet, so we don't actually need the extents at all. Actually, yes we do. So essentially what we need to do is take a look at the extents. and figure out which one is the furthest out from the center. So we're just taking the half extents here, which might actually be the wrong thing to do. Let's not do this. Let's see, the center is going to be the geometry center, so we're using that. Extents min. And then, let's see, I guess let's loop through. Oh, we have adds. So just for you guys that are new to the stream or new here to the channel, we break for ads once every 30 minutes for 90 seconds, and we like to just do that so that nobody misses any content, right? I know on the YouTube side ads work a little bit differently over there, but on the Twitch side we're served ads on a pretty regular schedule, so we like to something will happen today. I didn't get any ads. Nice. Yeah, it depends on locale and like region. So if your locale and platform and region doesn't have any ads to fill that slot, none will play. Some people will only get banner ads. Some people will get 30 seconds of ads instead of the 90 seconds. No ads in Finland. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's just kind of the way it works, right? So it varies. Not everybody gets them, but for the people that do get them, I like to pause the stream so that nobody misses anything. So, all right, cool. Ads are dead. So essentially what we're going to do is we're going to take the untransformed center and figure out from these extents which one of these points is the furthest out, and that's going to give us our radius, right? So I don't think the extents object gives us this is just a vector 3 of min and max. So I guess we could cast this to an array of let me think about that for a second. Do we want to check each individual axis and just take that one? Probably. No, I don't even think we need to do that, actually. I think we can literally just say which one, the max or the min, is furthest away from the center, and take that one. Overcomplicating this by overthinking it. This is what's happening there. So, let's do F32 distance equals, and then we'll say K max. And for X, we will say vector 3 distance, and we'll use G extents min, and we'll use G center. Whoops, center. Right, so we actually don't need to do this because we're just getting the distance from the center here, right? So let me do vec3 distance G extents max from G center. So that's the center point of the geometry. So we'll take whichever one of those is greater. We don't need to translate that. Oh wait, yes we do. Yes we do, because of scale. I didn't think about that. Yeah, because of scale we have to. Okay, so let's get this back. That kind of sucks, but it's a lot of transformation, right? Maybe we should probably cache that somewhere. But to get it to work for now, I'll keep it. Let's say to do cache this somewhere. And I'm putting that as a to-do because anytime the scale changes, or the transform in general changes, that's going to have to be recalculated. So I might not be able to cache that, but we'll see. Okay, so we get the extents min, extents max, and then we're also going to have to translate and scale the center for the same reason. So let's just use the center here. So we find the one that's furthest from the center, we use that as our radius. Right, so let's just say mesh radius, right? And then the radius of the line itself is what we're going to use to say whether or not this intersects. So distance to line, this is going to say based on the center. So F32 dist to line, I guess we'll just call it. And then point. Point is essentially going to be the center. Oh, we can't call that center, can we? Let's call this transform center. Oops. Transform center. What? Why is it not? Oh, because I can't spell. Right, transform center. Okay, and then we say if distance to line is less than or equal to. Actually, do I even need the mesh radius? Yes, I do. So if distance to line is less than or equal to is that going to be radius? I think we want distance to line is that going to be plus mesh radius? Think about that for a second. That's going to be minus mesh radius. So we take the distance of the line, which is the transform center of the mesh. We take the distance from the transform center of the mesh to the center of the line. And then that distance we subtract the mesh radius from that. And then we say if that is less than the radius, then we have a collision, and then we should include it. That's what I'm getting. Okay. I think that's right. How do you handle transparent textures? Blending alone can hide stuff. So we sort them, basically. So we have a forward renderer right now. We don't have deferred rendering in place yet. So right now we basically take a look at the material and say, does the material have specifically a diffuse texture or an albedo texture that has transparency? And if it does, then we say that's a transparent object, and we sort it to the end of the list. And then we take all of the transparent objects and we sort them according to their distance from the camera. And that's how we handle that, right? So yeah, okay, you guys are just kind of talking about that, yeah. So one of them can hide the other. Yep, exactly. So no matter how much fun this is, I would really like to have one more dinner before it's 2024. Time zones are a bitch. Yes, they are. All right. So let me catch up on. Let's see it. League of Lego Boy 99. Welcome to the stream. First time chat. I'm a hacker. I'm also a little mentally corrupted. Join the club on that one. Wish to change that for the new year. I wouldn't say change it. I'm mentally corrupted. I'm doing okay. Okay, and you've seen a few ads, Maggots. Yeah. Did somebody say earlier, by the way, hello, Steve Wozniak? That's the first time I've gotten that. I got, what was it that I got the other time? Edward Snowden's cousin is what I got one time. Yeah, that was pretty funny. All right. It's 2:28 here. I'm mentally corrupted. Pointer to pointer. Yeah, I get that. I totally get that. All right. So if we have this, then we should just be able to. I'm just essentially gonna copy pasta this, right? Let's see. So add it to the list to be rendered. I should split this out into a function, I know, but I'm not going to do that right now. We're going to get it working first. And then go from there. So, is within distance, so include it. All right. So we do that, and then after we've looped through all of it, we have to do all this stuff. So this is where our sorting comes into play. So that's all going to be the same exact logic, and I think that's all the way outside. Yeah, okay. So that is here. Okay, so transparent geometries, did we not create? We didn't do this bit. That should be here. All right. And all these allocations are using our frame allocator, which is a linear allocator, which gets reset at the end of every frame. So I'm not worried about performance overhead there at all. So this, in theory, we should be able to pass in our directional lights, the center of the view frustum, and then what radius we want to include, which we should also have. And we should be able to include geometry based on this. So I'm going to go ahead and say, let's take this. And let's go to down to our query methods, right? And we'll do right after this one. And say KAPI to export that. All right. Oh, this needs to be struct frame data over here. All right. So we've got that. And now we should be able to call that from our testbed code. Over here. So let's see. We are in. Just want to make sure I'm in the right spot in the code here. So for each cascade, when we go to enable this, let's see. It's basically going to be a similar call to this. So I'm going to do this, but then it's going to be query from line. We're going to disable this one for right now. And then shadow clipping enabled. What does this want? Again, this needs direction and center. Okay, so direction. I think we can use light direction. Yeah, there it is. So we can use that. And then we do also have center in here somewhere, I think. Center right there. But that's center for this particular split. So I don't think that that's going to work right. Let's do this then. Vec 3. Culling center. And we'll do the same basic check, right? So if we have our center here. What did we change that to before? What was this? So we can do... There's the center. Here we go. Paste this right here. We'll go culling center equals center. And then down here, we can use culling center so that we're always using the correct center, right? Actually, do we need to do that? Yeah, I think we do. Culling center. And then, what was it? The radius? F32 radius. Yeah, the radius was next. So the radius, I think we figured out by... was right here. So this is based on the position of the view frustum. So I guess we'll call that culling radius. And do we... yeah, it's going to be the same thing. All right. So down here, we'll do culling radius. And, okay, I think that should give us what we need. So we'll see if we at least get everything that we expect, right? And unfortunately, I think because we have to use the sort of one that encapsulates everything, I think that means we're still going to wind up having to draw everything. Every frame. Even if it's not within that frustum. Let's see. Shadow clipping enabled. And then culling frustum is set but not used. Okay, so... I guess let's turn that off for right now, and then also turn this off, and shadow clipping enabled. We'll comment that out too. Someone called you David once, referring to Javid. Yeah, that's happened a few times, especially when my hair was longer. That happened a lot, which I'm growing it out again, so I expect that to happen a lot more in the future. Yeah, for sure. That's that's happened a few times for sure. Let's see. Do I use batch rendering? Not yet, no. That is something we need to put in place, but yeah, no, not yet. We're going to set up a separate pass for that. So one of the reasons that we're setting this engine up the way that we are is so that we can actually support all these different rendering methodologies without having to completely overhaul the renderer every single time. And so if you want to switch to forward rendering versus deferred, it's simply just use a different pass. So yeah, that's the idea. Okay, I think I got... Did this build successfully? Okay, so... Let's try and run this and see what we get. Whoopsie. What did it fail to copy? What do we have here going on here? Where have we crashed? In sorting. Interesting. But why though? That's interesting. Let me just try running this again and see if that was a fluke. Nope. Why is my sorting logic all of a sudden failing? We have 16 of these. Geometry count -1. Yeah, that makes sense. 0 through 15 indices. Geometry distance compare. That should be fine. Transparent geometries. Did I create that with the wrong type maybe? No, geometry distance. Array. Yep. Well, that's bizarre. Transparent geometries. This is literally the same thing that I copied over from the other function, so I don't know why that's failing. Let me see what's calling it. Did we miss anything in here? Scene direction, center radius, frame data, out count. Scene direction, center radius, frame data, out count, and out geometries. We definitely have enough space in this guy reserved. That is interesting. There's GL multi-draw and OpenGL, but nothing of that sort in Vulkan. Is it due to usage of command buffers? I think I saw some extension of Vulkan. So it's GL, or not GL, VK draw indirect, I think is what it's called, or something like that. Yeah, I haven't actually used it yet, so that's going to be interesting to... I've done it in GL, I haven't done it in Vulkan yet, but yeah, I think it's draw indirect, I want to say. That allows you to do that. Draw calls take an instance count by default in Vulkan. Yeah, so you can do it that way too, if you want to batch it. Which I might just switch everything over to batch rendering calls, and then just pass a 1 where we're not doing that. But you skipped OpenGL and went straight to Vulkan. Yeah, indirect is just the GPU draw command generation, right? Yeah, I don't remember, to be completely honest. I have to look it up. Multi-draw is not for instancing, it's for batching. Yeah, that's the thing. It depends on what you're trying to do, right? There's GL draw arrays, elements indirect too. Yeah. Yeah, so theoretically, like, there are things that we definitely could be batching, but we're not, right? So in theory, the way that I want to set it up is to have draw calls batched by material. So we basically draw everything that has one material all at once. But yeah, instance is like what you would use for foliage, right? Or like grass, where you draw like, 100,000 instances of one thing in one single draw call. But it's the same thing with just different transform, basically. Yeah, I don't know what to make of this problem. I guess I can just turn that off for right now, but that seems very... I need to debug through that and figure out why that's doing that. So I guess I'll just do that for now with a big old to-do. Why does this segfault? All right, let's see if that helps. It's possible that's something else I'm doing that's just wrong. Entirely possible. Okay. So that's interesting. So the shadow showed up for a single frame and now it's gone. Do we get any in here? No. So it's possible I have something backwards. Possible and likely that I've got something backwards. If you guys could keep chat to English, I would greatly appreciate it. Yeah, because I don't know what you guys are saying, so yeah, if you could keep it to English, I would appreciate it. Ori D, hello, and Happy New Year to you too. Yeah, it's not New Year here for me yet. I still got a little over 9 hours left, so... All right, so let's see. I'm guessing I got something wrong over here. Let's actually debug it, right? Let's do that. Let's set up a breakpoint in It's weird, by the way, that this is fine, but this is the one that segfaults. All right, so geometry center. Let's do a breakpoint right here. All right. So our distance to line. Oh, well, that might include that might explain it. Infinite. That's pretty cool. Mesh radius is infinite. All right. So what do we? Extents min, extents max. Transform center. Okay, that's basically about as close to No, there is a little bit of transformation in there. Okay. Scale transformation. Otherwise, it's pretty much identity. That's interesting, though, that it's infinite. So I guess maybe we need to split these out and see what the heck is going on. What is the center? Oh, that's not right. The center is... Yeah, that's definitely not right. Alright, where is that coming from? Well, we have ads. I'm just going to pause. Pause the stream for 90 seconds, just while those ads run through. So for any of you that are new here to the stream, I like to just pause the stream whenever ads come up, just so that nobody misses any content. Thank you for the stretch redeem. Yeah, ads are not cool. You know, nobody likes ads. But if I didn't do them every 30 minutes, we would basically have, might as well have a drink. Appreciate that. Thank you for the redeem there. If I didn't run ads every once in a while, Twitch would run them anyway as a pre-roll, like a big long pre-roll. And that's like the death of any stream, right? Because nobody wants to sit there through like 2-3 minutes of ads before they even know what the content creator is doing, right? That sucks. So this is definitely the lesser of two evils, as it were. So we're almost done with the ad break anyway. All right. Ads are dead. So, Culling center has not been set, which is interesting. So, oh, I know what's happening. It's because I'm a dum-dum. That's what's happening. So, we're setting the culling center and the culling radius on the last iteration of the loop, right? Can't do that because we're on the first iteration of the loop, and that's always going to be wrong. Because we haven't entered the last iteration of the loop yet, so these aren't going to be set. Okay, so now I have to think about this. Do I loop twice and figure this stuff out, and then actually set up the data on a second set of loops? Okay, yeah, that is definitely the problem. So the problem is the last cascade that we have is the one that is furthest away, right? And we need to use essentially we need to use the clipping frustum from that. But the problem is we don't know what that is until we've entered the last cascade, right? Because we haven't performed these calculations yet. So, I guess what the way to do this would be to perform everything up until this point, where we actually start building out the geometry list. We would do everything up until that point, and then perform these in a separate pass. That way we could have all the stuff pre-calculated up front, and then come back and do this, right? It's kind of gross, but it is what it is, right? So what we'll do is we'll just take this guy and yeah, I think just these 2 lines should be enough. And we'll come down here, and right before or right after the visualization, right? We'll do a close off of that loop, and then immediately open another loop as a separate step. Populates the cascade data to be rendered. So we'll perform all the calculations in one pass and then do a separate pass to actually gather the geometry data. Actually, let me say that. Gather the geometries to be rendered. And that should get us around that issue. Okay, shadow camera position, I think, is the only thing we're missing out of that. Looks like it. So shadow camera position is this guy right here. Okay, so we just need to save that off. We're saving off lookouts and projections, but we just need to save off shadow camera positions and then reference it by the array index. So let's see, that's going to be up here. So vec3 shadow camera positions max shadow cascade counts. And we'll just default this to shadow camera positions sub I equals vec3 0. Shadow camera position. So I guess we'll just do this sub C, and then we'll change this to, whoops, to that sub C. And then down here, we can reference this one. Sub C. All right. All right, let's run this. And I'm just going to turn off this breakpoint. I just want to see if it does what we expect right off the bat or not. Looks kind of like it does. I don't see that changing. So I think that might be good. Let's have a look inside. That looks like it's rendering correctly. So I think we might actually be good to go. I think so. Okay. So, our culling is technically working. However, because our scene is so small, we're technically not seeing the benefits of it. Let me see if... Let me try RenderDoc one more time. Let's turn these on. All right. Capture, maybe? Hey, it did it that time. What the heck changed? I don't know. But I'll take it. Nope. Still corrupted. Okay, I give up on RenderDoc. I'm gonna try reinstalling it, I guess. Or maybe even just rebooting. You never know. It's Windows. Could be just Windows things. So at least from a performance perspective, it's going to be a lot faster to call geometries this way. So I'm okay with that for now. And it seems to be working. The only way we're really going to tell that, because our view frustum is so much larger, is going to be, I guess, to move like really far away from it and see what happens. Or I could shrink the view frustum, I suppose. Let's see, I think I defined that in here. Let's see. So if I create my projection matrix with like a cutoff of 40 instead of 400, that'll tighten up my cascades. So maybe that will allow me to easier or more easily see it, right? So let's do that. All right. And so basically that means that we're going to be just clipping a lot closer than before. And we should see a lot of that stuff drop off. We have to back away quite a bit because that zoomed out sort of last pass of the shadow map is pretty huge. I don't know, it still feels like it's including everything to me. If I go all the way to the other end of this, it should not do that. So we'll probably have to work through some additional profiling there, because that still doesn't feel right to me. It's still telling me that we're drawing 395 objects in the shadow pass, which is technically times 4. And that should be basically one object, which is this massive terrain at this point, which we're at the edge of, incidentally. So this number should definitely not be 395. It should be much, much lower than that, right? Okay. So I guess what is our radius that we're getting in here? So if we take a look at this, actually it's going to be in simple scene. I want to see what this is. So our radius is 36, which kind of makes sense. Our mesh radius is 28. Our distance to the line is 23, so that makes sense that it makes sense that that one gets shown. Is this mesh radius is scaled, right? So the center is extents min, extents max. These are both scaled by the model matrix. The transformed center is scaled by that. The center is the center of our frustum. So I guess all these things are just legitimately passing. The question I have is if we move our camera position, is this center position changing? So let's try that. All right, let's try, I guess, just moving like off this way. So our center position essentially should be somewhere close to like our actual camera position, which is here. So we should be way off center at this point. So our center, yeah, that did move along the z-axis too. And mind you, this isn't the exact camera position, it's the center of the frustum, so it's going to be looking forward, which is on the negative z, so that actually does make sense. So our distance to line is 57. Wait. What? Let me start with the first mesh. Let me do this. And then come back in here and recheck this. Wait, where was it? This one. So our mesh radius is the same as our distance to the line. What are we doing here? Oh. I'm using the wrong center point. Okay, that's what it is. So in simple scene, I'm using the wrong center point. This shouldn't be center, this should be transformed center. Thank you for the follows, by the way. I appreciate that. Welcome. All right, and let's try this again. I'm going to remove the breakpoint. All right, and I'm going to back up from this a little bit and see. If that starts to drop off. Yes, it is dropping off. It's dropping off a lot, right? And obviously, yeah, as we move the camera away, this number down here is dropping off a lot. Okay, so that is now doing what we expect. So when I get closer to it, I don't see any pop in. Yeah, this all looks like it's working like it should be. And so if I face away from this now, yeah, we are properly culling those objects because you can see now that there's only a couple of things being drawn, right? Our frame time is still not great though, but we can see that we're not generating a lot of, we can see here that we're not generating a lot of this, right? In terms of geometry being generated on the, or drawn rather, on the shadow pass. So that appears to be working as I expect. So that's a good optimization. Again, our scene's kind of all concentrated, right? So we're not going to see the benefits of a lot of culling like we would if stuff was off in the distance, but that's definitely a good start. I think the next thing we're going to have to do probably is start splitting up the terrain, right? I don't really see a way around that. Yeah, I don't really see a way around that, right? I don't think there's much we can do there. Let me just check something really quickly. All right, so Another thing that we can do is we can try cutting down, cutting our terrain up in little bits, and start occluding those when we're drawing, right? And it would be much easier if we could actually get RenderDoc to actually successfully like capture stuff, but unfortunately, let me look through some of the settings because I think there might be a way for me to like change directory for capture files. Maybe that's defaults to temp. Let me try putting this on a different drive because I wonder if that's the issue. Okay, let's try this one more time. Interesting. That was the issue the whole time. Wasn't saving to the drive correctly. Okay. Anyways, what I was wanting to sort of discuss here is we see that we have our shadow map passes are what's taking all the time, right? If we turn on this little clock here, this kind of gives us a full duration of what our frame is doing. So it looks like well, that's faster than it used to be. Most of these used to be over 1,000, so that's definitely faster than it used to be. But that is what's taking most of the frame time. So let's see, this is measured in microseconds. So we're at, what, 2 milliseconds for our shadow map pass? There's 3. So where is... Oh, our UI is taking quite a while. That's interesting. I wonder what's taking so long with that. Oh, I know what it is. It's this down here. It's all this text. So we should probably optimize that at some point. That's actually kind of surprising that that's what it is. There's also all of this stuff that's happening every single frame, which is concerning. So this is maybe something we can look into as well. Thank you guys for the follows, by the way. Appreciate that. What are the blue spots on the car when the engine heats up? The blue spot... Oh, are you talking about, like, there's some, like, weird blue lighting in here? Because there's actually some spotlight or some point lights that I have that are like down here on the camera that are affecting it. So yeah, there's like an RGB light. It's getting drowned out by the sunlight because the sunlight's so bright. But yeah, there's actually additional lights that are like off this way. You're doing a lookup from a pre-baked atlas, right? I'm surprised glyph rendering is a bottleneck. Yes, that's exactly what I'm doing. And that's why I was like, wait, what? So if we take a look at this, like that's it, right? That's all it's looking up. So I'm really surprised that that's a problem. I'm guessing it's because there's so many of them, I guess. I don't know though, but like it's one draw call, so I'm not really sure why that's taking so long, because it's literally just a quad per character. I suppose I could render that to a texture and just draw that, but like, I don't see how that's going to be much faster unless it doesn't change all that much. Not using multi-channel sign distance fields fonts, not yet, no. That's on the list, but yeah, so for right now, what we do is when we load a... Let's see. So when we load a font that's like this, that has like text in it, like from different languages and stuff. Like this is Japanese and this is Korean. What we do is we do a check against the atlas and what characters are currently rendered at that font size to the atlas. And then if we need more, we render them and we add them to the atlas. So we keep a running atlas for that font at that font size, and then we add more glyphs as needed. And then that way, whenever the text changes, we could just look up and say, hey, do we need anything else added to this map? If we do, add it. Otherwise, it's just a quick lookup this way. So, is it a hash table? How did I do that? I wrote that a long time ago. I think I'm literally just looking it up by the... I think I did do it with a hash table, actually. But even so, like, that only happens when the text actually changes, right? So if the text hasn't changed, we don't do new lookups on this. It's only... So basically what I do is I set the texture coordinates on each quad to where it should be in here, right, from that lookup. But if the text hasn't changed, I don't do that. So I try not to change it every frame. So maybe this was a frame when we were doing that, although I don't see... Unless that's what all these things are. I don't know what... We have a lot of stuff being moved. A lot of copies, right? What is buffer? What's a staging buffer? So we're using the staging buffer for a lot of stuff, and I think this might actually be what we need to kind of look into. We do reuse the same staging buffer, but I'm wondering, like, maybe this is where we need to start looking. Because, like, look at how much time that takes. That's the whole frame, but, like, I don't know, though. This is microseconds, so these are all relatively small. I'm not really too worried about that. Like, 2 or 3 microseconds, like... I don't think that's a performance bottleneck, right? The terrain, which is this guy, is definitely heavy, right? And then this is that car mesh, and then this is all the Sponza meshes, which is a lot of draw calls, yes. And then this is debug geometry. All these guys with these small counts, these are all debug geometry. But again, most of those are pretty light. Are all those queue submits per frame? Not all of them, though. Only where we're having to update something, which I think most of these are... Well, maybe there are a lot of them that are per frame, which is not great, right? And unfortunately, everything is using the same queue right now, which is probably something we're going to have to address soon. Because we should be having some of this stuff on different queues, because there's no reason for it to be on the same queue. So maybe that's part of the problem too. But again, we're talking... Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of them, but they're only 2 microseconds a piece, right? So maybe we have maybe 100 microseconds here for all of them. Maybe. I kind of even doubt it's that much. Unless this duration is just wrong, right? It really isn't too bad. That's what I'm saying. So I don't think we're GPU bound here. I think we're CPU bound. I think is ultimately where the problem is. I think this is basically 3.6 milliseconds, right? Like, that's not great, but not terrible either. There's definitely room for improvement there, but like, I don't think that's where the problem is. I think we're CPU bound. I think that's the issue. So, yes, the shadow maps do take up a lot of that, right? Because they're having to draw everything, but like in the grand scheme of things, it's not that long. Do just get a better CPU. Well, that's the funny thing is I have a 16-core CPU. It's pretty fast, right? So I think it's literally just we have to do some optimization work, right? Do I have... I have VTune installed on my Linux box, but not on this one. So VTune is probably something that I need to probably start looking into next. There are some unnecessary things that we're doing to visualize. We have ads. There are some things that I'm doing that we that I probably don't need to for the frustum visualization, so we might remove those. So I'm just going to wait for the ads to run, right? We've got about a minute left on that. We got about 30 seconds left on ads. RenderDoc's going mad. Yeah, I mean, no, RenderDoc is actually, it's working now. So for some reason, it was just like failing to write to one of my drives. Which is kind of bizarre. But as soon as I told it to write to a different drive, it worked. So I don't know. I'm thinking maybe motherboard issues again because, you know, this motherboard is questionable at the moment. So I think that's what I'm going to wind up doing tonight / maybe tomorrow. All right, so ads are dead. So really quickly, I think what I'm going to do is just try eliminating some of that unnecessary logic in this guy. These visualizations, I think I'm going to kill this, right? So let's do that. Let's kill all this stuff because this is a bunch of transformations and stuff that don't need to happen. This is another section of that. Let's see, do we need... Yeah, I don't think any of this is needed. Okay. it's Thor's hype train song. He had this running for like hours the other day. It's crazy. Let's see. So scene pass. I think if we stop updating those things, that'll probably help us out some. And then these are for raycasting for our picking. I can leave those. All right, so let me try this. If you're interested about the Radiance Cascade Global Illumination stuff, I can drop a link to the paper. Yeah, can you drop it in the Discord, though, in the Kohi channel so I can see it? Because if you try and drop it here, it's not going to let you. And that way, people from both sides can see it. Had an issue with RenderDoc as well due to firewall settings, weirdly. That is weird. What the heck would the firewall have to do with it unless you're doing something over the network? I mean, I know it does have this, like, attached to running instance thing, but that's kind of bizarre. All right, so let's run this. I think we're mostly CPU bound, like I said, so I think that's where we're going to have to make a lot of our changes. So that really didn't give us much. Very little, I would say. So yeah, we're definitely going to have to do another deep dive into this. Let's see, what other places could we look at? I guess we could just kind of look through this and see what... I know I had some hacks in here. So let me get rid of all this stuff, because I really don't need this stuff in here anymore. There's no point in keeping it. It's not really doing us any good anyway. Get rid of this one. That one I need to keep. Okay. So this is stuff that can go away as well. Okay. So those hacks that we have left are legitimate ones I need to hold on to for now. I guess let me install VTune really quickly. You see if I can actually get that installed fast. Because that is a pretty decent profiler. I've had pretty good luck with it, so... standalone download is probably going to be the one I want. Let's see. Download that to the old D drive. What do you mean I'm out of storage space? I have gigs left on that drive. What are you talking about, Windows? No, I have terabytes left on that drive. Why are you saying I can't download it? Really? Wow, okay. I'm not sure what's going on there. Apparently I can't download it though because my C drive is too full, but my D drive has plenty of space, but Chrome won't download it anyway. So that's cool. I think I just need to format C. Make all my errors go away. Let's see. It could not attach to the instance after that. Had to reinstall and permit local access. That is bizarre. Almost as bizarre as not being able to download a file to a drive that has literal terabytes of space left. All right. What the heck am I going to do about that now? I don't even know how large the file is. Let me see if I can clear up some space, I guess. Give me one moment. Let's see, do we have... Like, I don't even have all that much that I can actually, like, delete without completely boning my setup here. All right, get rid of that. Let's see what else. I guess I can get rid of... Okay, there we go. Wow, Windows, why have you done this? My computer is just not pleased with me today. It is not wanting to do the thing. All right. Maybe that will be enough. Maybe. We'll see. All right, there it goes. It's downloading. Okay. It's probably, yeah, wget. I suppose I could do that. Yeah, that's a good point. I'm a web developer. What is this dark voodoo magic? Well, at the moment, it's Windows not working, but yeah, we're doing game engine development. So, yeah, it is dark voodoo magic, I guess you could say, because technically a lot of what you're doing is throwing things into a black box that is the GPU driver and just expecting it to hopefully work. So, yeah, it's not completely wrong that it's dark voodoo magic. Not completely inaccurate. Okay. Oh, so that's neat. So I had Visual Studio open in the background with a different project open, like full-blown Visual Studio, because that project was only packaged that way. Tisk. But I closed that and it instantly freed up 4 gigabytes of hard drive space. Tell me where that makes sense. It just had a project sitting open, not doing anything, and it was occupying 4 gigs of hard drive space just from the project being open. And as soon as I closed it, that space freed up. Help me understand this. Thank you guys for the follow. I appreciate that. Let's see. And when it doesn't, it lets you or wait. Yeah, it's probably swap, I'm guessing, but yeah, super, super gross, right? Oh, you weren't following yet? Well, I appreciate you following now. Thank you for that. Any plans on switching the Sponza to next gen? It has PBR textures. So it does have PBR textures now. And we probably will switch to the next gen model at some point. Yeah. But I do want to do some optimizations before we get to that point, right? Because we're CPU bound apparently on a few things. And before I switch that over and potentially make that worse, I want to obviously fix that. All right, so evidently it's finished downloading, so let me get VTune installed. Just bear with me here for a second. Let's put this in here. Thank you for the follows. I appreciate that. Welcome. I'm just in the process of getting VTune installed on this machine real fast so that we can do some proper profiling, right? Where is the VTune window? It says it's there, but I don't actually have it anywhere. Windows is at it again. All right, let's try this again. So that's pretty funny. The installer window is not anywhere where I can actually click it. What is going on today? You know where there's days where you just feel like you just want to get up and walk away because nothing's working? Today is like one of those days for sure. My Windows install is just doing all kinds of crazy crap, and it makes me wish I was still on Linux. And I might honestly give Linux another try after this. Yeah, it makes sense to optimize first, exactly, yeah. It's going to be better next year. Well, that's only a few hours away, so I'm dubious about that. I have a NVIDIA GPU, not that. not AMD. AMD has released some profile tooling. Yeah, Arch for the win. Arch is actually what I use. I was daily driving it for quite some time, and actually I still do. But for streaming, I have to go on Windows because there was an issue that kept causing OBS to just basically crash and burn, and it would drop the stream and everything. It was terrible. And since then, I haven't been able to actually switch back because of that issue, because I would get like an hour and a half into the stream and then it would just drop, which is beyond suboptimal, right? I was going to make a joke about downloading more RAM, but since containerization, cloud compute, everything as a service is the norm now, it's not a joke anymore. That's true. You can download more RAM. It's sad, but true. Yeah. For work, you require Windows, also for some games, otherwise Arch all the way. Yeah, I mean, I would live on Arch all the time if I could. But sadly, it's just not been reliable for streaming lately, which is deeply unfortunate, but I don't even know how to... Can I... So... Yeah, it won't even let me... So literally my taskbar has this, right? And these windows have spawned somewhere that I can't even click them or move them. And like no form of keyboard shortcut is allowing me to move it. So I can't even install this. I think all AMD setup on Linux is fine. That's probably true. Yeah, NVIDIA is usually the one that has all the issues on Linux. Unfortunately. So I guess because of Windows, I'm not going to be able to install VTune, apparently. That's deeply unfortunate. Deeply frustrating. Don't know what to do about it. Let me try... Let me try something else. Yeah, it just won't let me... It won't let me focus the window even. I think there was a... Wasn't there a keyboard shortcut that you could use for that? I thought it was... I don't even know where it... There it is. There it is. Just installing something on Windows is like a challenge because it literally puts things off screen where you can't click them. Frustrating. All right. Yeah, external logic. That's exactly what I wound up having to do. Hover over one of the previous windows and right-click with the mouse. Try maximize or move. Oddly enough, though, the first time I did it, it didn't work. And now the profiler is also off-screen somewhere else and is not accessible. So I have no idea what it's doing. And I can't move it now. And shift right-clicking it doesn't work. I mean... How hard is it to get a windowing system that works? I don't understand why that's such a difficult thing to figure out. Because now what I'm getting is like something that isn't even... I can't even manipulate it, right? Like... Now I'm getting this. Yeah, I bend the GPU to my will, and Microsoft Windows is the cryptic uncooperative element here. Absolutely. It's like being able to write the most complex code ever and then not being able to work a VCR. Rage-driven development, 100%. Yeah. It's like stupid stuff like this, like, but why? None of the platforms do a particular good job at windowing. Yeah, no, they really don't. Like, the only one that's come close, I would say, is Mac OS, believe it or not. That's why I use tiling window managers. Yeah. I do on Linux on occasion. And I like Wayland a lot better, but Wayland isn't supported by everything, right? And when you have, the problem is mixed DPI monitors. So I have my main display is a 4K monitor, but then I also have 1024 HD, regular HD monitors off to the side. So it's, mixed DPI seems to throw a wrench into just about everything, which is really annoying. Thank you for the follow. Appreciate that. So, I guess I'm going to give up on VTune for now until I can figure out how to actually get it to install, because Windows is just not letting me do the thing. It just, like, offers to open a new window, but then that new window can't do anything. It's frozen. So, that's cool. Wayland is way better, but it still doesn't have good support. Yeah, and that's part of the problem, right? Like, I feel like the answer for Wayland is it'll be ready in 10 years, but that 10 years just keeps shifting out every year, right? It's always 10 years away. Which is unfortunate, because I do like Wayland. It's nice and smooth and works great, but application support just isn't there. In fact, I still have to build Wayland support into this application. Just like Fusion Energy, yeah. It's next decade. Next decade is when it's going to be solved. Meanwhile, everybody still has to use X. It is moving faster, yeah. It's had more development in the last couple of years. It's come a long way, actually. I found last year to get the creative way to get Windows off screen, attaching a screen twice, HDMI and DisplayPort, so I got a frame buffer not displayed in front of me. I mean, yes, but why? Do you agree support is more important than just good features? That's a loaded question. So, support is important. If you're talking like platform support, I assume is what you mean by that, like supporting X and Wayland and Windows and Mac OS, like support in that sense is important, but I'm also not going to sit there and like support every single windowing manager that's out there directly, right? Like that would be kind of ridiculous, right? So I think there are limitations to that, but I do think it's important, right? I think with everything, too much of anything is a bad thing. If you focus on being so, supporting so many platforms, you're going to also limit yourself as to what you can do. So there are some times where you have to say, you know what, I just can't support this thing. It's too old. It's not worth supporting, and that's okay, and live with that, right? I'm certainly not going to write this game engine, for example, to support an operating system from 20 years ago, right? It just doesn't make sense. So, features are also important, but I would say the most important thing out of all of that is stability, to be completely honest. More so than features after you get the initial product done. Because you dual boot and a broken driver... Wait, and a broken driver and try with deep DisplayPort forgetting to unplug HDMI. Oh, I see what you mean. Okay, I gotcha. All right. I think we've had a little bit of a decent exploration exercise today in terms of what we've been able to cover. But I think due to my system issues that I'm having, and due to my machine like not even wanting to boot sometimes, I think I probably need to just go ahead and bite the bullet and rebuild my PC and figure out what the heck is going on with my Windows install. Because obviously there's something going on here and it's not right. So I think before I move on any further, that's probably what I'm going to wind up doing. So let me save all of this and push it up at least to GitHub. So that way we can, at least you guys will have access to the latest changes, right? So here's the list of files that we've updated on this stream. Performance tweaks, fixed shadow pass occlusion. Yeah, that's good enough for now. Did I not add first? I didn't add first. Push. So, all of this is available on the feature PBR descriptors branch. We are going to merge that back into feature PBR. Maybe I could do that real quick. Let me actually do that real quick. That way we can get off that descriptors branch, because there's no real reason for me to stay on it. We can do all this performance stuff from that. So before we end, I'll go here and create a pull request. And I'm going to go from PBR descriptors to just the PBR branch. So to give you guys an idea, this is all of the stuff that's gone into the refactoring of our descriptors, right? For within Vulkan, right? We've had all of these commits. We've had 73 files changed within 16 commits, right? So this is all of the changes, and some of these are even collapsed, right? The large changes are collapsed, right? So this is all of the work that we've done over the last couple weeks. And I'm scrolling through it really fast. I realize that, but just to give you guys an idea of how much we've actually accomplished, right? So let me see. We will create this pull request, and I do these pull requests so that I can squash and merge, right? That way we don't have this huge list of commits going in, but we still have sort of a paper trail of all those things, right? So we are going from PBR descriptors into feature PBR. So we'll go ahead and do this. This is just a sort of recap of all the stuff that we've done so far. Right, and I can remove that branch now. So now I should be able to, I can do git checkout feature PBR and pull. And now all the stuff is up to date on the PBR branch, right? So you guys can have access to that. And then, so a couple of things that we're going to be attempting next is some more performance enhancements, or maybe we might even close off this PBR branch. I haven't decided yet. There are a couple more things I want to do that. So I want to combine some of the maps. So right now we have 5 different maps for our PBR materials. We have a albedo, a normal map, metallic, roughness, and AO. And those last 3 only require really 1 channel of data. So I'm going to combine those into a single map, and then have a utility to be able to have take multiple images and combine them into one singular image, and and do that programmatically so that we don't have to like open them all up in a graphics editor and do it manually. And so that'll be one optimization. And then the next optimization, I think anything outside of that probably could be done outside of the PBR branch. So that's probably the last thing that we're going to cover in the PBR branch. And then in terms of the performance stuff, we're probably just going to get all this stuff merged into the main branch and then start hitting performance from the main branch. The only other thing that I have to do in the PBR branch, now that I just thought of it, there are some changes I have to make for Mac OS, but I'll make those offline because I can't stream from the Mac at the moment. So, oh, we have ads. I wish I saw that. I would have snoozed it. All right. We have ads, and then I will pick somebody to raid after that. You should probably switch back to Linux and get a KVM with GPU pass-through / Windows for development. Windows has been weird since they started rewriting parts of the kernel in Rust. Yeah. I'm not going to say what's truly on my mind about that, but yeah. I think you can probably guess. So yeah, I think that's... I obviously need to come up with something that's a little bit more stable for streaming, right? I know I do have some hardware issues here, so I have to address those first, and then I can come back and address the other stuff. Hoping swapping the motherboard will be enough to at least resolve the boot up issue that I've been having, so we'll see. Got about 15 seconds on ads left. All right. So I think ads are pretty much dead. So let's see. Nothing. Yep, there we go. Okay. Second PC for streaming. I've thought about doing that just to split it up because that would be a lot better, right? Because then I don't have to worry about it pooping itself, right? If I have a graphics driver crash or something, it's not going to affect OBS and things like that. So that's probably what I need to do, but I don't have a PC that's powerful enough to be able to stream reliably, other than my development box here. So then I can boot midstream. Yeah, exactly. So maybe eventually, and I might be able to use some of the proceeds that I got, maybe to afford some of that stuff, but I'll have to save for a little bit in order to do that. Because that's basically what I try to do with all the proceeds from this, that I get from the Twitch subs and stuff like that, is I try to roll it back into the channel, right? So I should be able to use funds from that after I save for a little bit, to maybe build a second streaming PC. And maybe when I do that, maybe I'll stream the build. But I can't stream rebuilding my main box because that's my streaming PC. So, but yeah, that is the direction I eventually want to go. But I also then need another set of hardware that includes an AMD GPU so that I can test on that, because I've got some outstanding issues that I have to fix for that, but I don't have an AMD GPU. So I've got some stuff to think about in terms of that, right? But with all that said, I'm going to look and see who is online that I can raid. Let's see. I think this time I might go ahead and raid Ferret Software again, just because I've actually got some stuff that I've got to go take care of, and I don't have a lot of time to hang around post-stream, unfortunately. But the reason I like to raid Ferret Software is because it's a ferret rescue, for those of you who don't know. It's run by Pirate Software, who is another game dev here on Twitch. But basically, Ferret Software is a Twitch channel that runs 24/7, and the ad revenue from that goes to take care of the ferrets, which is an extremely expensive endeavor. It costs thousands of dollars to keep them well and healthy per year. It's a very involved thing. And so what he does is he basically takes in ferrets that are in near-death scenarios where they were going to be put down, and he gives them the proper medical care that they need, and sort of rehabilitates them, and he gives them a permanent home. He doesn't rehome them or anything like that. He keeps them there in a permanent home, right? So I think it's a really good cause. I like to support it as much as possible, and so that's going to be what we're going to do for today. So yeah, we're going to raid Pirate Software, or not Pirate Software, Ferret Software, and yeah. So thank you guys so much for being here. I appreciate it. Don't forget to follow me if you haven't already here and over on YouTube. I greatly appreciate the follows and support, and I will see you guys next time. So thanks. All right, see ya.